Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. And my name is Joe, and today I'm joined by David to discuss the best captaincy options for game week 30 plus. I suspect those with 2 matches coming up will be top among our choices. David, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. It's so good to be finally back doing these again. Normality is resumed in some form, even though obviously the Premier League is going to be behind closed doors and lots of things will be different on the pitch and in the stadiums. For us, covering the fantasy angle, you know, the Scoutcast is back and the captaincy video is back. We'll have the team news video coming back. It's all very exciting.
Yeah, lots of videos, lots of podcasts coming up. We'll help you get prepared for each and every game week. Just before we jump into the main video, this one has been sponsored by FanTeam. Here's a quick video about what's on offer.
The Premier League is back, and so are the daily fantasy Premier League prize pools on FanTeam, even bigger and better than they were before. The daily fantasy Premier League contests across the opening week, so from Wednesday the 17th of June to Monday the 22nd of June, will exceed €320,000 in guaranteed prize money. The featured main event is the €100,000 guaranteed prize pool contest with €20,000 up for grabs for first prize. And the beauty is the rules are very similar to FPL, which is ideal for most FPL managers that will be watching this. If this sounds like something for you, make sure you click the link in the description below and give it a go and see what you can win.
Okay, so diving into game week 30 plus captaincy. 2 home games against Arsenal and Burnley. Surely a Man City player is the on paper best captaincy option. But which one? David, which one?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think the community has actually made a definitive decision on it just yet because the way the captaincy poll's gone so far, it's still quite tight between De Bruyne and Aguero, which I think are the 2 obvious ones. So far, at the time of recording, De Bruyne is on about 38% in our captain poll, Aguero on about 34%. So De Bruyne is just edging it, which I suppose is no surprise. I mean, we'll start with him. I mean, the pros of going with De Bruyne, I suppose, are a little bit obvious. I mean, but let's talk about them in detail because we haven't had the opportunity to do that for such a long time. When it got to sort of March sort of time, we're like, yeah, De Bruyne, he's great, and you all know why. You know, reminding ourselves why. You know, his assist potential is just absolutely ridiculous. Over the last 6 matches before we went into coronavirus, he was top of the league for key passes. He was second top of the league for big chances created as well. And when you throw into, whenever you look at the assist potential of a player, you have to look at their colleagues around them, and the colleagues he has around them, in this case, are Aguero and/or Jesus, who were also in fantastic form in the lead up to lockdown as well. So, you know, I would imagine he's going to get assists. I can see him getting lots of assists if he plays in both games. But then, of course, that's the other thing as well with De Bruyne is that out of all the outfield players, he seems like the most likely to start both games, or if not start both of them, maybe play a significant amount of time in both of them. If you look at the minutes played by Manchester City players this season, obviously Ederson is top, but in second place is De Bruyne. So, you know, he's more nailed on than any of the defensive players as well. So, I mean, he's an absolute essential player to own. He's a strong captaincy candidate as well. Now, the only reason why I'm not 100% sold on him just yet, I mean, I may still go with him if he proves to be the safe bet, as we often see sometimes in these debates, and everyone else is going to go for it, then I maybe will just cave and go for him anyway. But I'm strongly considering Aguero because the one thing that De Bruyne sort of, I say lacks, I mean, not that he's, because he's a world-class player, but in terms of, in comparison to Aguero, is Aguero clearly is the more exciting player from a goal threat perspective. De Bruyne is having his best goal-scoring season ever. You know, he's already matched his total on that and will probably score more. But generally speaking, when you look at what he does or what he was doing before lockdown with where he shoots from, it's not quite the same level of, goal threat really as Aguero because I think it was 5 shots in the box, no big chances and 5 shots on target. For De Bruyne, but when you compare that with Aguero, who was playing in fewer minutes in this period, last 6 matches before lockdown, 18 shots in the box for Aguero, which was the joint 3rd best in the league from just 403 minutes. You know, all the players above him have all played more minutes than that in that period. You know, 7 big chances was the 2nd best, 8 shots on target. I think was still good enough for the top 5. So Aguero was seriously busy in front of goal in the lead up to lockdown. And I think the one thing that a lot of people are worried about with Aguero is, like, is he going to start? But I think he's a lot more nailed on, or at least was, because we have to kind of just look at what we know. He was more nailed on before lockdown than people realise, because if you look to the minutes played by Man City players in that period, he was involved in all 6 matches. He didn't start all of them, but he was involved in all of them. He played 403 minutes, which was the most of any Man City player who usually plays in that front three, whereas Jesus was just involved for about 250 minutes. So it's really, really hard to imagine that with 2 home games, Aguero is not going to get possibly close to 60 minutes in both. And when you look at how much he was doing in front of goal in that period anyway, he might not need 90 minutes in both to, get a couple of goals in both games and get like a 20-point haul. So for me, De Bruyne is the safe bet. Aguero is the explosive bet. I don't know which way I'm going to go yet, but they're both fantastic players, and I think they should both be in everybody's squad.
Yeah, no, I think part of it is the strategy and also where you are in the rankings as well. So if you're in the top 10,000 or top, really high up, the safe bet is KDB. But if you want to get even further where you are, so it could be anywhere in the rankings, I think Aguero is the one who's more explosive potentially. But obviously, so you've got to factor in the sort of psychology of where you are. For me, it's a straight choice. The guy who scores the most versus the guy who assists the most. And I look at stats for the whole season for this. And I've also had a look at the last 6 encounters between Man City and Arsenal and Burnley in all competitions. And what that shows is that against Arsenal, the tally is Aguero, 5 goals, last 6 against Arsenal. KDB, 3, and Sterling, 2. So Sterling as well comes into the mix. Could be a good option. And bearing in mind, this is like the start of a new season. What happened at the start of the current season that we're in? He scored a hat-trick on the opening day. So, a very good option is there. But so far, I think Aguero... that 5 goals includes an Aguero hat-trick, by the way, against Arsenal.
Right.
Look at
but then again, that shows you what he's capable of, doesn't it? I mean, that's what we are hoping he can do in one of these games.
Looking at Burnley, that's just Arsenal. Looking at Burnley, Aguero's got 5 goals as well. KDB 1, Sterling none. Some of that's to do with who's playing in each of those matches. Jesus has also scored against both. It's looking like Aguero, if he is starting, he's got a record of 10 goals in the last 6 matches each for those 2 teams. So for me, it's easy. The guy who scores the most wins against the guy who assists the most. So that's for me. I wanted to also mention Mahrez as a differential there. Mention Sterling as well. Jesus is obviously in the mix. If you think he's going to start, he's going to do well. In terms of minutes per goal attempt in the box, these were some of the stats we read out in the Scoutcast this week. Jesus is in fact the best. He's even better marginally than Aguero in terms of frequency of shooting in the box. But also Mahrez should come in the mix as well there. He's had 23 shots on target, which is the same as Sterling. Talking across the season here, considerably reduced minutes. He's had 8 assists and 7 goals. He links up really well. There's a spread of points there. If I saw Mahrez in the starting lineup, I'm not going to own him, and I'm going to think, I think you can feel confident, and I think it's a very risky move. But I think Mahrez could be a good captaincy shout. There's other options this week as well. Arsenal. Well, I say Arsenal. It's basically a Aubameyang, isn't it? What do you think about Arsenal options for the captaincy?
Yeah, I mean, I briefly considered it, but anyone who's seen me on any fantasy content ever will know what I'm going to say next. I don't always trust Aubameyang too much, and looking at some of the data that he sort of recorded before lockdown, which is largely indicative of what he's like as a player. I'm not seeing anything in that period that's different for him. He's one of these players who operates on a kind of languid brilliance, a little bit like Ozil, but a little bit more energetic than him, in the sense that he doesn't shoot very often. But when he does shoot, the proportion of those shots that he has are usually big chances on target. But in terms of the actual frequency, it's not as much as you'd like. So in that particular period, he had 10 shots in the box from 517 minutes, and we compare that with Aguero having 18 in 403. So, it's very obvious that out of the two, Aguero is the more dangerous. And I guess you could say Aubameyang's more nailed on, but Arsenal's turnaround's quite tight. I think it's like 66 hours. So perhaps not as nailed on as usual, but I mean, really, I think he'll still start both, but you still just got to remember that. But Aguero out of the two doesn't need to start those games to necessarily do well. Aubameyang 10 shots, in the box. It's 8 fewer than Aguero. So it's just completely different, completely different league, to be honest, in my opinion. 5 big chances, again, that's fewer than Aguero, even though Aguero played fewer minutes. 6 shots on target, again, it's fewer than Aguero. And generally, that's just the story for the whole season. So the other thing, he's playing Man City. So Arsenal have to play a Man City defence, whereas Aguero gets to play an Arsenal defence. So, obviously that swings the pendulum further away from Aubameyang. I think Aubameyang's never scored against Man City as well. I'm not 100% certain on that stat, but he certainly doesn't have a good record against them. Brighton, I'd be less worried about. But, Man City's 2 fixtures arguably are way more appealing than Arsenal's 2 fixtures are. And I'm still going to own Aubameyang. He's going to be heavily owned. But actually, to be honest, I was quite surprised. Most people are going to be staying away from him by the looks of it, Aubameyang on the captaincy. In our captaincy poll, only 5.9% of people want to captain him, which is the 3rd highest. But it just shows you how much interest there is in the City guys. And actually, to be honest, he's got a similar backing in that captain poll than Sterling, which I'm actually very surprised by. I think Sterling, we need to see a lot more from him. If I had to choose between Sterling and Aubameyang, I'd go Aubameyang because he's more likely to start and has been more reliable in front of goal than Sterling. But the thing is, that's just that's a stupid question because everybody's going to have De Bruyne and should have Aguero. So I don't even think I'd be giving Aubameyang the vice captaincy because that's going to go to one of the other 2.
I think it depends what chip people are using this week. And to plug the Scoutcast again, there was a variety of free hit and bench boost strategies there. And one thing I noticed with the bench boosters, if you want to use that money to beef up your bench, it does mean going without perhaps Aguero, certainly Sterling. And KDB seems to be in everyone's side. Just from what you're saying, some people look at the stats and go, well, hang on a minute, new season, why are we looking at recent stats? Well, it's good that you do look at those recent stats because I've looked at all season stats and it's the same story. So whichever pocket of matches you take, you're going to get that same story with Aubameyang. Yeah. And what it is...
But also when you... Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, when you come back into because whenever we do these in game week 1, we are looking at the last 10 game weeks of the previous season. Yeah. And we generally find that there is a lot of carryover. When you've been absent from competitive football for so long, for the first 2 or 3 weeks, teams do tend to settle back into the pattern that they established. So we saw, for example, Crystal Palace ending one season with some great defensive stats, and they start the next season with exactly the same, ability to keep those clean sheets. It then tends to tail off when a few other teams get into their stride and are able to find a way through. The same with attacking players. We've seen it with Salah come back in off the back of a good campaign, and the fact that he had a 3-month break means nothing because he's still a great player. So I'm completely with you. The stats that were pre-lockdown, we obviously have to caveat them a little bit because lockdown was an interesting mental experience for literally everybody on the planet that no one's really experienced before in the Western Hemisphere. But even still, a lot of these players are going to sink back into their MO. And for Aubameyang, his MO is to shoot less often than Aguero. Yeah. So let's pay attention to that.
What's interesting though for Aubameyang fans is that the quality of his shots is exceptional. Looking at shots on target, Aguero this season 26. And then you look at shots on target of Aubameyang, 27, roughly the same. But then you look at their minutes per goal attempt, and as we said, Aguero is shooting in the box every 22 minutes or so. Aubameyang is every 47 minutes, so he's shooting way less often. That's the story.
Yeah, massive difference.
But it's the quality of those shots. They're on target. And he's got 17 goals this season, which is one more than Aguero. So Aubameyang is not to be underestimated. He's actually a very good striker.
I never deny that.
I have been tempted. But in this circumstance, does he compare to Aguero and KDB as a captaincy shout, given the 2 matches, the home, possibly a home advantage, there may not be. The only thing I'd like to mention is Aubameyang is having contract talks, or is perhaps not having contract talks, but basically Arsenal fans want to keep him. Arsenal want to keep him. We don't know what he wants to do yet. So I don't know whether that factor in his motivation. He might have just given up. He might have his eyes on another club. Or he might be playing for a lucrative, perhaps final lucrative contract in his career, because he is 30, going on 31, I believe. Just thought I'd mention that. There are other options in the double game week, and this is a guy that I am actually going to captain in one of my Sky fantasy football teams, not my fantasy Premier League, and that's Jack Grealish. I think he's a really good captaincy option for security of starts, underlying stats, and also the opposition as well. it's against Chelsea. That could be, but we've seen him. I think it's against Sheffield United, and we've also seen him against all sorts of sides doing well. He's often the best player on the pitch, no matter who he's playing. What do you think, Grealish? Am I mad to even consider Grealish as a captain?
Well, I mean, I don't think so, because I was just reading the notes as you were just finishing the previous section and thinking, what's my opening line going to be on Grealish? Am I going to make it something really sensational in these times of, the media going for their sensational headlines? And I was thinking possibly a better captaincy candidate than Aubameyang, and whoa, everybody coming at me with their pitchforks. But I don't know how committed I want to be to that particular line. But when you compare the two players for what they were doing before lockdown, Grealish had the same number of shots in the box as Aubameyang. So if we're talking about the frequency of those efforts, then he's matching him. Aubameyang's was shooting with the high quality, as you mentioned there. So there's no big chances for Grealish. So it was a lot of snatched shots, not too many high quality, and only 2 on target. But his creativity is just ridiculous. So in that period, only 2 players, I think it was, created more chances than him, and that was Maddison and De Bruyne. So there's absolutely no shame in being behind De Bruyne for literally what he is, his bread and butter. And he created 4 big chances as well, which was the joint 3rd best in the league. So his creativity is fantastic. Now, obviously, you then, like I mentioned earlier with De Bruyne, when you have a fantastic creative player, you often have to look at the players around them to see if they're capable of delivering on that. Arguably, he doesn't quite have the same level of quality amongst his colleagues as De Bruyne does. But I do think Samatta is a little bit of an improvement on what they had in the centre forward role before. He something like, I think he had 8 shots in the box in the 6 matches leading up to lockdown, but only played, I think, in 3.5 of them because he was a new signing. So his minutes per shot was a lot higher than Wesley's was, and he was largely accurate and a little bit of quality there as well. So even though Samatta's not a world beater, he's got a chance of helping capitalise on some of these chances that Grealish is going to create. And over on the other flank, El Ghazi, 4 goals and 5 assists this season. So there is an element of hope there to suggest that Grealish will get assists out of those players. The fixtures are. I kind of think they're sort of so. They're not amazing. Sheffield United, but I will say is that Sheffield United isn't as tricky as people think, because they do actually give up quite a high number of chances, and the reason why they keep so many clean sheets is because of Dean Henderson. His XG prevented this season is, I think, the best in the league, because it means that he's saving the chances with a high XG. Is that sustainable? Possibly, because he's been doing it all season. But either way, Aston Villa will have lots of chances against Sheffield United. I also think they'll have a fair number of chances against Chelsea as well, because even though Chelsea have, they made a little bit of improvement defensively. I still don't think it's a settled back 4. So, there will be little cracks, little chinks in the armour for them to slip through. And Aston Villa really just needs something. They need anything. They really got to attack these 2 games, and Grealish is at the heart of it. So, absolute must-own for people. I'm not going to consider it for the captain in FPL, but if you're looking at the Sky games and he's playing on days when, he can really match what's around him, then I'd really, really consider a captaincy for that, especially.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the stats across the season as well. So in terms of expected goal involvement, I quite like this in terms of, so you can look at what they have done. So he scored 7 goals, he's assisted 6 goals, but his expected goal involvement's around 11. So he's just marginally above that, but you'd expect that. But that's pretty good. So what he's on a par with Richarlison, Ali, Martial. He's in that sort of territory. So if you're the kind of person that would captain Martial or Richarlison or Ali in a double game week like this, Grealish is your man, because he's in that ballpark. But looking at expected goal involvement for other players, like your likes of Salah, not a double game week this week, but in terms of Sterling or De Bruyne, they're much higher than him. So, I don't know, just thought I'd mention that. This is out of midfielders, that is, rather than attackers, so Aguero even better. Same thing in FPL, isn't it? Good, but he ain't playing for City at the moment. So, how about this lot here? Sheffield United, and particularly your man. You got the shirt in the background of Lundstrom as well.
Still there.
Now, I think it's undisputed that their players are good to own, but are any of their players good enough to captain this week?
I mean, if that shirt had ears behind me, I'd go and cover its ears up and say no, I don't think we're going to be captaining him this week. But I mean, I will just while I'm here, just make the case for owning Lundstrom because, it largely depends on the chip strategy. But just to use my situation as an example, with the chips that I've got, it means I can afford to just literally just pack my team full of double game week players. I'm going to bench boost them and then wildcard everybody out. This pretty much is probably my last opportunity to own Lundstrom all season, and my last opportunity to own him as a defender at a reasonable price, because we all know he's going to be 5.5 million, maybe even a 6 million midfielder next season. So if it's my last chance to own him and it's a double game week and the fixtures are relatively nice, then why not take a punt on him? I mean, it sort of maybe depends on whether or not you want Fleck or McBurney on top of, because I think you should have Henderson and maybe Stevens or Egan, so you've got that double up that are there as actual defenders in place already. Because I don't really think Lundstrom's a defender, because he's not a defender, is he? He's a midfielder. Yeah. The way he responded to, a lot of people are sort of like, oh, maybe he won't start, but the way he responded to losing his place, he was really just kind of like hitting the ground running with a comeback just as lockdown came along, because I think it was game week 27. He came off the bench and scored the winning goal against Bournemouth. So I think he ended up with maybe something like an 8 or 9 point haul in that game. And then 2 games later, he finally got his starting position back from Sander Berge, from having shown so much, exuberance off the bench in the 2 games previous. Got his start back, got an assist in the 1-0 win against Norwich. So got the assist, the clean sheet, bonus points, 11-point haul. So just as lockdown struck, Lundstrom was making his comeback. So for a double game week, he doesn't have to start both games for you to get a decent haul out of him. And they played a recent friendly. He started the game and he scored 2 goals. I mean, it was only Hull, but it just kind of shows you that he is ticking all the right boxes for you to take a punt for 1 week on a double game week. And I mean, I'm not going to say captain him, but if anybody did and he got another 21-point haul, which he's fully capable of getting, he's got 5 double-digit hauls this season, then you're just going to be in dreamland. So, yeah, you got to have him. He was straight into my team the second I saw him get that brace in that friendly against Hull.
Well, he's not in my team. but once again, I do think if you are of a maverick persuasion, a Sheffield United player isn't a bad bet to captain. But once again, they ain't playing for Man City, so they're always going to be second best. But it was something else we mentioned on the Scoutcast, was something that Late Riser put up some figures on social media about, and that was that Villa have the worst record, the worst defence for set plays. They are conceding the most shots. Sheffield United in centre-back positions and in Fleck and in Norwood, they have an abundance of creativity around set pieces. And Lundstrom, if he's looking like he's going to start, yes, indeed, he's been very threatening from those types of goals. And of course, he makes runs from... He's a midfielder. Don't get confused. He's not a defender. He's a midfielder. Norwood is a real outside punt here because he's on penalties. And in double game weeks, we've seen it time and again, the likes of Mark Noble and players like that, James Milner even. If a player is on penalties and if they're going to get minutes and there is double game week, chances are you might get some returns out of there, and it could be an interesting, risky punt there. But yeah, once again, away from double game week players, there's lots of players with just one match, but those matches are so good for some of them that some people might be tempted. A lot of people say, "Oh, everyone's got double game week fever." What about some of these single game week players? And I was thinking in particular, I don't know whether you fancy any of these guys here, but Mount and Abraham scored last time against Villa, and I think they look good options against Villa, because we said Villa, terrible defence, but also Jimenez against West Ham, very reliable. I think you're going to get returns. I don't know how much returns you're going to get, but what do you think about, is it possible to ignore the double game week totally with the captaincy?
I mean, because it's Man City, I'd say no. I mean, you're taking a huge risk if you do ignore the double game players with the captaincy. But I think you should definitely consider them in the argument. I mean, we always want to make sure that we are covering all bases. So, yeah, I mean, I was going to mention Jimenez as well. His stats pre-lockdown very nice. He had the same number of shots in the box as Aguero during that period, 3 goals as well. And really nailed on. He just never gets rotated anymore. And I don't really know what the plan is for the Europa League, but I know that it won't be, intermingled with the Premier League. So whatever's happening with that, I think is post-season. It means that we're not going to see that kind of interfere with Wolves' lineup. And I don't really know who you rotate him out for, because they don't really have anyone else who plays that centre forward position. They've got Neto and Jota and Traore who play in that front three, but none of them can spearhead it. So, and the thing is, he's just so durable as well. I think, was it last year he had the Gold Cup and he just went straight from the Premier League into the Gold Cup and then just straight back into the Premier League again, rather into the Europa League in like late June, early July. But we're still banging the goals in. He just couldn't stop. He's like a Duracell battery. He's ridiculous. So, yeah, I think he's going to be. I mean, just as an aside from the captaincy, if you've got no wildcard and you've got to use your unlimited transfers to build your team for the rest of the season, Jimenez is just absolutely essential. So, yeah, I think he's going to do well this week, especially with it being West Ham. Jota, I think, also could do quite nicely if he can sustain his minutes, because his minutes per shot in the box, minutes per big chance, minutes per shot on target is actually better than Jimenez. So, two really exciting options there. I actually also think there's going to be potentially quite a lot of goals in the Merseyside derby. Now, derbies are usually unpredictable events where the form book goes out the window, and of course it's 3 months as they all last the ball. But Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison went into lockdown in exceptional form. Last 6 matches leading up to lockdown, nobody in the Premier League had more shots in the box than Calvert-Lewin. He had 8 big chances and 10 on target. So, anyone who remembers life before lockdown will know that he was just on absolute fire. I think he could get something in the Merseyside derby, and Richarlison was the man putting up the chances for him, because they had a very good, effective 4-4-2 that Mike Bassett would have been very proud of. And the Liverpool assets as well. I mean, Salah's up there too, 18 shots in the box, 9 of them on target. And of course, he has loads of creativity to him as well. So it's going to be very hard to captain a player from the Merseyside derby. But we have to just mention these names, that they were no slouches before lockdown came in, and they were all players that, if they've got that fire in their belly to kind of hit the ground running again post lockdown, which I actually think a lot of players will have. A lot of them will be so excited to be back on the field. Then yeah, if there was it was like a 3-3 draw at Goodison Park, I would not be too shocked, because both teams have got some very, very exciting attacking players.
Yeah, no, I mean, all those players you mentioned, it could be one of those weeks. Usually a double game week player is the top scorer. Usually they're not the one you think. So it will be a Sheffield United defender. It will be Norwood. It will be, we've seen in the past, it will be a Stoke defender. I do think all those names you mentioned will do well. I think Abraham, Mount, Pulisic, whoever is starting for Chelsea against that Villa defence, I think will do well on paper. Jimenez, Jota, Doherty as well, if you really... I mean, this would be the ultimate maverick move, to captain a defender from a single game week side when Man City have a double game week.
Wow, yeah.
And if that play pays off, I tip my hat to you, and my Brighton scarf even as well. So, good luck at whatever your decisions with the captaincy. David, what's happening with the members area as well? I just wanted to mention that, because I know that there's some kind of extension, isn't there? For those who have membership, they're extended to the end of the season, and that's still going on. And of course, that's where we've got all our stats and information from.
Yeah. So if you had a 2019-20 membership package that you purchased to be the full season, or the half season one that some people bought in January, we've extended those to the end of this campaign free of charge, because obviously it's not your fault that the 2019-20 campaign didn't finish before June 1st, which is normally when they expire. So that's running until this season finishes, whenever that may be. We expect it probably to be the end of July. But also, if you don't have membership currently, you can purchase a package for $17.50. You can get hold of membership, which will give you access for the end of this campaign and the entirety of the next one. So it's very, very good value for you to buy it now, because then you're set for the next season and a third, I suppose. That's how much football you're going to get out of it. If you are currently on a package, you can't actually buy that now. But when your current package expires, you will still have the opportunity to go and buy that at that current price, the $17.50, before it goes up, before the start of the new season. So yeah, you don't worry. If you are on one of these extended deals for 2019-20, you will still have the opportunity to get yourself the next one too. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
And hopefully you will find it very helpful. As you say, the members area underpins absolutely everything we do on Fantasy Football Scout, and it's an absolute goldmine of exciting nuggets of information for people.
Yeah, lots of information. Do check that out on Fantasy Football Scout. Lots of information on site about that. Also, please do like this episode. If you've enjoyed it, do press that like button. We do like that. And also remember to subscribe. That way you can stay up to date with all our latest videos and podcasts each week. In the meantime, thank you for joining us and goodbye.